Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I recently got a comment asking about school and friends, and it made me realize I haven't really told you much about me. So in today's video, we're going to do a bit of a deep dive into a recap of who I am and how I got here. If you guys have any questions or comments, I would love to interact with you, so please drop them down below. And with that said, let's get into this video. Growing up, it was just me, my mom, and my big brother Dante. I can honestly say that I never appreciated my mama enough for all that she did and sacrificed to raise us to be who we are today. Reflecting on it now, I recognize all that she went through to take care of us. Shortly after my dad left, the Lord led my mom to homeschool me and my brother. When it came to homeschooling, we went to different events and groups to build friendships, so we weren't as isolated as some people believe when they hear that we were homeschooled. My grades, on the other hand, were not doing so great. I needed more one-on-one concentrated teaching time that my mom couldn't provide, having to go back to full-time working and balance teaching us. In God's perfect timing, 8 years later, my mom met my stepdad Sean through eHarmony. They got married shortly thereafter, and I not only gained a bonus dad, but I gained 2 new big brothers. Around the same time, I was going into 6th grade and Dante was going into high school. We both began attending public school there in Boerne, Texas. While I started to thrive academically, this was the beginning of my journey down a road to delinquency. Even though I grew up in the church and my mother tried to raise me to have a biblical worldview, I still strayed into deep deception. Praise God that I am not suffering lifelong consequences from some of the decisions that I made. I was in complete rebellion against my parents and my faith. I was still going to church and playing the part of a good Christian girl, but I was the farthest from it. I pretended that I was happy, and some days I felt like I was, but I was still struggling with my identity every day. In 2020, school was moved to strictly online classes. At the time, I was in all higher level courses and still doing very well despite the chaotic world events. This was the distance I needed from certain influences. However, I was still very lost. In 2020, my parents wanted to move to North Carolina for ministry. My brothers and I were against this idea, and I led the rebellion in my stubbornness and outright defiance at the time. All of the plans with that move ended up falling through, and we remained in Boerne. At the end of 2021, my mom and I started volunteering at a sanctuary ranch there in Boerne. They had horses, donkeys, goats, a pig, some dogs, and a bunch of cool exotic birds that I got to work with very closely. It was a very cool experience and taught us a lot, but we also faced a lot of loss during that time. I was personally growing in my faith and coming back to it, but I was still very off. But my parents had very strong faiths and were praying that God would show us where to go next. We had kept our sights on somewhere in Texas because we wanted to stay close to our hometown and where we were familiar with. But every opportunity that we pursued was falling through for one reason or another. Then we realized that we needed to open our range and let God do his thing. At that time, God showed us a ranch in Florida. Basically, a year after our sibling rebellion, my parents and I were moving to Florida. Roughly 18 hours away from our hometown and family, this was a big step of faith for us, but it was especially hard for me. After spending a long time trying to fit in with all of the wrong people, leading me to most of my terrible decisions, it was very hard for me to leave the few quality friends that I had finally found. But I recognized at the time that this is what I needed, and even though I struggled at first being so far away from them, I realized that I needed to be okay with being alone at times. When we made this move, I would have been going into my senior year of high school. However, after doing courses online for 2 years and never feeling academically challenged, I decided that I wanted to just test out and get my GED. I graduated at the age of 16 and quickly decided to launch my website. I've always been an artist, and I thought this would be the perfect opportunity to kickstart my business. I'm still trying to grow that business, so if you guys would please support me and go check it out, it is linked in the description. 4 or 5 years of poor decisions, I finally began turning back to my faith. I realized that everything I was pursuing was never going to give me true joy. I had moments of happiness, but I also had times where I felt lost and alone. I realized that life without God was a struggle, and that He was always going to be the answer. Once I was truly born again, I felt freedom for the first time. I felt peace and joy like never before. This is when my life turned around. When I finally began pursuing a relationship with the Father, things changed. He restored my relationship with my parents, which I thought was lost forever after everything I had done. I thought they would never be able to forgive me. But through Him, they could, and we were able to rebuild what I had broken. I found a peace that was unimaginable. I found everything I was ever searching for, but I was looking in all of the wrong places. I stopped worrying so much about having friends and came to peace with the season that God had me in. I realized that He took me away from the people I claimed as friends to show me that He was a better friend. The only friend that I still talk to from Texas is my best friend Mallory, and I've gotten a lot closer to my parents too. When it comes to making other friends, I'm a lot more selective about who I get close to. After a year in Florida and all the growth that came with that season, we felt God telling us it was time to move on again. So we went to North Carolina for a few months to help some friends with renovations on their house. During this time, we were praying and asking God to show us what He had next for us. We had wanted to move back to Florida, but the prices of everything were going up and we didn't know what we were going to do. So again, we turned to God and asked Him what He had for us. Moving to Florida was a big jump out of our comfort zone, but it was in preparation for what God had next, Mexico. Had we insisted on moving back to Florida and gone out of God's will, we would have been directly in the path of Hurricane Ian. I talk more about our move to Mexico in my Why Mazatlan video, so if you haven't seen it, go check it out after you finish this video. How did I end up doing YouTube? Well, I had always thought that having a channel would be fun, but I never knew what content I would be able to create. I had considered doing it about my time working on different ranches, but I just never had the opportunity or the skill set to do it at the time. When we were living in North Carolina, I helped our friends with their small gardening channel, and it really made me realize that I would love to do this. So I started thinking more about what kind of content I could create at that time. As our plans to move to Mexico were set in motion, I realized this was the perfect opportunity to document this adventure and that it would be the perfect start. So here we are. I truly enjoy sharing my life, our adventures, and my faith with you all. I hope that you guys enjoy coming along for this journey and all that comes with it. I'm really trying to grow this channel into something substantial and even potentially income at some point. So if you haven't already, please consider hitting that subscribe button. It's free. And if you enjoyed this video, please leave a big thumbs up. It helps with the dreaded algorithm. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed, and I will see you guys next week.